What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for MLB Wednesday, April 20th.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon.
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top DFS picks for today's MLB slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, we have a 10-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the pitcher position. I like Carlos Rodon pitching against the New York Mets. Carlos Rodon pitches his best ball versus righty batters, only giving up a .545 OPS versus righties. He's facing 4 righties here tonight. And on top of that, the Mets have only hit 20 of his last 75 pitches. That's a .267 batting average. Carlos Rodon is $10,800 FanDuel salary, $600 less on DraftKings, averaged 40 fantasy points per game on the season last year, had an ERA of 2.37, record was 13-5, pitching an average of 92 pitches per game, and Vegas thinks this is going to be a low-scoring game. 7 runs scored in this game. That's their over-under. So I like Carlos Rodon here versus the New York Mets. I also like Sandy Alcantara with a 5% pitching advantage over the St. Louis Cardinals. Sandy Alcantara pitches his best ball versus righty batters, only giving up a .580 OPS versus righties, and he's facing 6 righties here tonight. And on top of that, the Cardinals have only hit 10 of his last 46 pitches. That's a .217 batting average. He's $9,200 FanDuel salary, $400 less on DraftKings. Averaged 35 fantasy points per game on the season last year. Has an ERA of 3.19. Record was 8-15. So not the best record, but he was pitching an average of 94 pitches per game. So I like Sandy Alcantara here versus the St. Louis Cardinals. Now you could also make a case here for Marcus Stroman pitching against the Tampa Bay Rays. Marcus Stroman is a pretty balanced pitcher facing a balanced lineup, and the Rays have only hit 14 of his last 59 pitches. That's a .237 batting average. You're going to save some salary with this pick. Marcus Stroman is only $7,200 FanDuel salary, $400 more on DraftKings, averaged 29 fantasy points per game on the season last year, had an ERA of 3.02, record was 10-13, pitching an average of 83 pitches per game. So I like Marcus Stroman here versus the Tampa Bay Rays. Okay, let's take a look at the catcher first base position. I like Jared Walsh with a 59% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Jake Odorizzi. Jared Walsh is batting 43% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .969 OPS versus righties. Jake Odorizzi pitches his worst ball versus lefty batters, giving up a .851 OPS versus lefties. And Jared Walsh is 2 for 7, batting a .286 batting average. Jared Walsh is $3,400 FanDuel salary, and he's 1,000 more on DraftKings. Averaged 11 fantasy points per game on the season last year. Has a batting average of .277. So I like Jared Walsh here versus Jake Odorizzi. If you're looking for a stud pick, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. looks to be in a pretty good spot here. He bats 11% better versus righty pitchers, batting a 1.054 OPS versus righties. Nick Pivetta is giving up a .738 OPS versus righties. Now, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he's only 4 for 14 versus Pivetta. That's a .286 batting average, but he does have a .946 OPS versus Pivetta. 4,100 FanDuel salary, 1,700 more on DraftKings, averaged 13 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .311. So I like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. here versus Nick Pivetta. I also like Sean Murphy with a 21% batting advantage over Jordan Lyles. Sean Murphy is batting 18% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .745 OPS versus righties. Jordan Lyles he pitches equally as bad to all hands, giving up a .864 OPS versus righties. And Sean Murphy is 5 for 16, batting a .312 batting average and a .874 OPS versus Lyles. He's 3,100 FanDuel salary, 1,800 more on DraftKings, averaged 8 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .216. So that batting average is a little bit low, but he's got good splits and he's got good history here versus Lyles. So I like Sean Murphy here versus Jordan Lyles.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, let's take a look at the second base position. I like Jorge Polanco with a 43% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Daniel Lynch. Jorge Polanco, he's batting a .818 OPS versus lefties. Daniel Lynch throws his worst ball by far to switch hitters. 43% worse than his pitch to lefties, and it looks like 25% worse than his pitch to righties, giving up a 1.074 OPS versus switch hitters. Jorge Polanco is 1 for 3 with a 1 OPS versus Lynch. He's 3,100 FanDuel salary, 900 more on DraftKings, averaged 12 fantasy points per game on the season last year, and he's got a batting average of .269. So I like Jorge Polanco here versus Daniel Lynch. I also like Whit Merrifield, especially on FanDuel. I think he's way underpriced on FanDuel. He's batting a .705 OPS versus righties. Chris Paddock pitches his worst ball versus righty batters, giving up a .887 OPS versus righties. No at-bats versus Paddock yet. Now, Whit Merrifield is only 2,700 FanDuel salary, but he is 2,700 more on DraftKings, so I love that FanDuel price. Averaged 11 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .277, so I like Whit Merrifield here versus Chris Paddock. Okay, let's take a look at the third base position. So here's a value play. Take a look at Ramon Urias with a 39% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Dalton Jeffries. Ramon Urias is batting 13% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .817 OPS versus righties. Dalton Jeffries pitching 27% worse to righties as he does lefties, giving up a .660 OPS versus righties. Now, Ramon Urias is only $2,300 FanDuel salary, $900 more on DraftKings, averaged 8 fantasy points per game on the season last year, and he's got a batting average of .279. So I like Ramon Urias here versus Dalton Jeffries. Okay, now here's a value play, especially on FanDuel. Take a look at Joey Wendell with a 29% batting advantage over Miles Mikolas. Joey Wendell batting 21% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .792 OPS versus righties. Miles Mikolas pitching his worst ball versus lefty batters, giving up a .769 OPS versus lefties. Joey Wendell is only $2,700 FanDuel salary. He is $1,600 more on DraftKings, averaged 9 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .265. So I like Joey Wendell here versus Miles Mikolas. Now, here's a value play on both sites, but a super value play on DraftKings. Take a look at Gio Urshela with a 63% batting advantage over a low-salary pitcher, Daniel Lynch. Gio Urshela batting 13% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .780 OPS versus lefties. Daniel Lynch pitching 50% worse to righties as he does lefties, giving up a .817 OPS versus righties. No at-bats versus Lynch yet, but Gio Urshela is only $2,700 FanDuel salary, and he's $500 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. He averaged 8 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .267. So I like Gio Urshela here versus Daniel Lynch. Okay, let's take a look at the shortstop position. I like Carlos Correa with a 48% batting advantage over that same low salary pitcher, Daniel Lynch. Carlos Correa batting a .841 OPS versus lefties. Daniel Lynch giving up a .817 OPS versus righties. And I like this pick because Carlos Correa is 3 for 8, batting a .375 batting average and a .750 OPS versus Lynch. He's only $3,000 FanDuel salary. He is $1,900 more on DraftKings, averaged 11 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .279. So I like Carlos Correa here versus Daniel Lynch.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
I also like Brandon Crawford with a 30% batting advantage over Chris Bassitt. Brandon Crawford batting 25% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .954 OPS versus righties. Chris Bassitt giving up a .693 OPS versus lefties, so he pitches his worst ball versus lefty batters. And I like this pick because Brandon Crawford is 3 for 7 with a .429 batting average and a 1.5 OPS versus Bassitt. He's $2,800 FanDuel salary. He is $2,500 more on DraftKings, so I love that FanDuel price. Averaged 11 fantasy points per game on the season last year, and he has a batting average of .298. So I like Brandon Crawford here versus Chris Bassitt. I also like Elvis Andreas with a 34% batting advantage over the low salary pitcher Jordan Lyles. Elvis Andreas batting 30% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .671 OPS versus righties. Jordan Lyles giving up a .864 OPS versus righties. And I like this pick because Elvis Andreas is 11 for 30 with a .367 batting average and a .839 OPS versus Lyles. He's $2,700 FanDuel salary, $1,100 more on DraftKings, averaged 7 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .243. So I like Elvis Andreas here versus Jordan Lyles. Now I think this guy's underpriced on FanDuel. Take a look at Bo Bichette, and he's batting against Nick Pivetta. Bo Bichette, although he doesn't bat as well versus righties, batting a .753 OPS versus righties, and Nick Pivetta giving up a .738 OPS versus righties. I like this pick because Bo Bichette is 7 for 14, batting .500 with a 1.604 OPS versus Pivetta. He's got 2 home runs versus Pivetta, and he's only $3,300 FanDuel salary, $2,200 more on DraftKings, averaged 12 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .298. So I like Bo Bichette here versus Nick Pivetta. Okay, moving on to the outfield position, I like Cedric Mullins batting against Dalton Jeffries, a 43% batting advantage over Dalton Jeffries. Cedric Mullins batting 14% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .947 OPS versus righties. Dalton Jeffries pitching his worst ball versus switch hitters, 28% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .800 OPS versus switch hitters. There's no at-bats versus Jeffries yet. Cedric Mullins is $3,000 FanDuel salary, $1,700 more on DraftKings, averaged 11 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .291. So I like Cedric Mullins here versus Dalton Jeffries. I also like Michael Brantley with a 33% batting advantage over Shohei Ohtani. Michael Brantley is batting 37% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .928 OPS versus righties. Shohei Ohtani giving up a .919 OPS versus lefties. Michael Brantley is 3 for 7 with a .429 batting average and a 1.071 OPS versus Ohtani. He's $2,900 FanDuel salary, $1,400 more on DraftKings, averaged 9 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .311. So I like Michael Brantley here versus Shohei Ohtani. I also like Jesse Winker with a 43% batting advantage over Dane Dunning. Jesse Winker batting 46% better versus righty pitchers, batting a 1.057 OPS versus righties. Dane Dunning giving up a .764 OPS versus lefties. No at-bats versus Dunning yet. Jesse Winker is $2,700 FanDuel salary, $2,100 more on DraftKings, averaged 13 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .305. So I like Jesse Winker here versus Dane Dunning. I also like George Springer with a small batting advantage here over Nick Pivetta. George Springer batting a .837 OPS versus righties. Nick Pivetta giving up a .738 OPS versus righties. But George Springer is 4 for 7, batting a .571 batting average and a 1.557 OPS versus Pivetta. He's $3,600 FanDuel salary, $2,000 more on DraftKings, averaged 13 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .264, so I like George Springer here versus Nick Pivetta. I also like Alex Verdugo with a 75% batting advantage over Jose Berrios. Alex Verdugo batting 40% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .906 OPS versus righties. Jose Berrios pitching his worst ball versus lefty batters, giving up a .832 OPS versus lefties. And I like this pick because Alex Verdugo is 4 for 5, batting .800 with a 2.2 OPS versus Berrios. He's $3,500 FanDuel salary, only $600 more on DraftKings, averaged 10 fantasy points per game on the season last year, has a batting average of .289, so I like Alex Verdugo here versus Jose Berrios.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this MLB slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.